For this exercise, you will be making 3 different drawings that will each help you to practice your cross-hatching technique. These drawings can all be done in your sketchbook using a 2B pencil. For the second drawing in the series, you will also need a ruler. Make sure to keep a pencil sharpener nearby so that you can keep your pencil sharpened as you work. For this first exercise, you will begin by drawing a series of hatch marks. Hatch marks are rows of parallel lines used in crosshatching that are layered together to create different values. Lines that are spaced farther apart create lighter values, while lines spaced closely together represent darker values. Begin by drawing rows of hatch marks anywhere on your page. For each row of hatch marks, you can experiment and try out different variations. In this example, I'm playing with a few different factors, such as the direction of my marks and how close or far away the lines are spaced from one another. You can also try to make your hatch marks curved or rounded, as well as straight. As you work, focus on drawing at a steady, even pace, establishing a rhythm for each row of lines. Try your best to keep your lines evenly spaced and maintain a consistent amount of pressure on your pencil as you work. You don't need to worry about making every row look perfect, but instead prioritize technique, and in time, your lines will become more consistent through practice and repetition. In the second exercise, you will need to draw a simple value scale and a gradient using crosshatching. You'll be using the same rows of lines that you made in the first drawing, only this time you'll be layering those rows together to create different values. Begin by using your ruler to measure out a grid of 5 squares, measuring 1 inch per square. Below your grid, draw a blank 1 by 5 inch rectangle. We're going to start by drawing in our lightest value in the square on the left. If you are left-handed, feel free to start on the right side instead. Begin by drawing widely spaced diagonal lines using a light amount of pressure on your pencil. Try your best to keep your lines evenly spaced, but don't worry if they're not perfect. Then you will need to switch direction and draw another row of diagonal lines on top of the ones you just drew, keeping the same amount of distance between the lines. Moving over 1 square to the right, you're going to do the same thing, only this time making your lines a little closer together. Then add in your second layer of diagonal lines on top. For the square in the center, repeat the same steps, making your lines even closer together. Once you get to the square that is second from the right, you can continue drawing diagonal lines that are very closely spaced together, only this time you can also apply a little bit more pressure in order to create an even darker value. Then repeat in the other direction, keeping the same amount of pressure on your pencil. In the square all the way to the right, your lines should be spaced so closely together that they are almost touching. Keep applying slightly more pressure in this square as well, then repeat going in the other direction until you have your darkest square. Once you have completed your value scale, it's time to start drawing your gradient down below. A gradient is a smooth transition from light to dark, so you'll be using cross-hatching to achieve that effect, making your gradient lighter on the left and darker on the right. You can begin your gradient by drawing a diagonal row of lines similar to how you drew the squares in your value chart. As you move from left to right, you'll want your hatch marks to become gradually closer together as they reach the darkest side on the right. Then repeat in the other direction, again drawing your lines closer together as you move towards the right. Once you have diagonal lines going in both directions, you can then add in some rows of vertical lines on the right in order to build up the darker area. To make these lines blend in evenly, you can draw them out all the way to the left side, adding in more spaces in between as you go from dark to light. Lastly, you can also add in some horizontal lines to create more contrast. You will want to draw these lines all the way out to the left, keeping them widely spaced so that they are evenly incorporated into the gradient. For the third and final drawing, you will be practicing shading in some basic shapes using crosshatching. Start by drawing 3 shapes on your page: a cylinder, a rectangle, and a sphere. In this drawing, you're going to imagine that the light source is coming from the upper left side of the page, which will mean that the tops and left sides of your objects will be lighter, and the right sides of your objects will be darker. I'll start by shading in the cylinder using a technique similar to the value scale and gradient, only this time as I draw in my hatch marks, I'm trying to draw my lines in a direction that follows the curvature of the form. So you can see in this example, my lines in the front of the cylinder are slightly curved since it has a rounded shape. This should remind you of cross contour, since the lines are describing the surface of the form, only this time they will also be creating value as well. From here, I'll begin to draw in more hatch marks that go in different directions, overlapping them wherever I want to create a darker value. You can see that I'm using a combination of rounded horizontal lines in addition to both diagonal and vertical lines. Keep layering your lines until you've reached your desired level of darkness. Once you have shaded in the front of your shape, you can also add in a shadow, again using a combination of lines that go in different directions. For my rectangle in the center, I'll use a similar approach, only this time my lines will be straight, since the sides of the box go straight up and down. Then I'll add in a shadow to make it feel three-dimensional. Then finally, for the sphere on the right, I'll keep my lines nice and round in order to capture the roundness of the form. As I move in different directions, most of my lines stay pretty round, since the sphere is round on all sides. Starting out, I keep my lines spaced somewhat farther apart, but then draw them closer together as I continue adding more layers. Then at the end, I'll draw a shadow as well so that everything looks consistent. So those are the 3 drawings that you will need to do for this assignment. Although it may seem complicated at first, crosshatching is definitely a technique that gets easier the more you do it, and with practice, drawing your rows of lines will eventually feel more like second nature. Just remember to keep focusing on establishing a rhythm and keeping a consistent amount of pressure on your pencil, and you'll get the hang of it in no time.